What's going on, guys? Good evening, good morning, wherever you are from the world. Now, on today's Laravel tutorial, the idea of what we're going to be doing today is last time we dealt with how to navigate with data from file to file or from your form and so forth, but we only dealt with what you called string information. And in today's tutorial, which is going to be a little bit longer, the idea is we're going to be dealing with how to get data, which includes certain different types of file formats like your PDFs, your MP3s, your MP4s. So without wasting much time, in my text editor, we are going to first start by manipulating our resources, which is our main page, this one. Now on this main page, I'm just going to delete everything because I don't need anything on it, but we are still going to utilize an HTML body. In this HTML body, I'm just going to create a center tag so that all my work can be centered, and then close it. And inside here, I'm going to add a form. Now this form's responsibility is to grab information, so I'll create a div class which contains information. For example, it will have a label for, let's say, a title of a product. Also, it will also have an input tag to grab that information, which is going to be text. Now I'm also going to add, let's say, a break line, then another div tag, and within this second div tag, it is also going to have a label, this time let's say for description, so I'm just going to call it disk, and for input it'll still be text, for it's a description. And lastly, let's say it's the file format, so we're going to have a breakline tag, a div tag, and within this div tag it's going to have a label for, let's say, file, and the input tag for this is going to be a file. And then lastly, we're just going to have an input tag which is going to be a button, and its value will be, let's say, upload. So if we were to give names, this one we can just call it T. For the description, we just call it D. For the file, we just call it F. Now this is basic based on what we prior did in our previous tutorial, and if we refresh we get something similar to that. So we can even come back onto our form. Let me increase the font a bit, maybe you might see better. In our form, we can just have an h1 tag that says file upload, and let's just put a breakline tag as well. If we refresh it, we get something not so fancy, but yeah, something like that. And for this one as well, I'm just going to also increase the zoom width. Awesome. So now how then do we get information from this into our Laravel? First and foremost, remember, whenever you're uploading information, especially if you're to be dealing with a file, a few key things have to be understood. Number one, we need a route, which is the file path that is going to be followed. And for ours, we're just going to create our URL, and let's call it upload, let's say, underscore data as a name. And also for a method, it is going to be post as usual because we're posting our information, but because there's a file involved, we need to include an enc type, which is multipart form data. This will determine that this is going to be sending a file information, or an information of a form which includes a file. And before we forget, let's add our token, because we do not want to be keeping on having any issues. So we add our CSRF token. At the end of the day, what we still have is still the same thing, but in essence, it is going to utilize this route when it is being uploaded, and it is also going to be utilizing this encryption format to send or to push the data. Now after doing that, it now means that we now need to create the route. Now the route, obviously we are going to be creating it in our what? In our routes web.php. But before we create the route, it's obviously we cannot create a route without creating a what? A controller. So how then do we go about it? In our CMD, which is this one, we are going to say php artisan make controller, and let's call it file controller. Our controller has been made. Also, because we're going to be uploading and we're going to be pushing information to a database, let's just also make our what? Our table. So php artisan make a model, and let's call this one products. Yeah, let's call this one products. Don't worry, it's not case sensitive. Products, and we're going to utilize it for what? For migration. Awesome. So we have created both our controller and our model, or for in our table. So for us to see our controller, we come to app http controller, and you'll see we have a controller called what? File controller over here, and the model that we created is this one over here. Now how then do we go about the next thing? We now need to first create a route, and as we said, we are over here. We are going to say route, and this route is going to be receiving information from the file, so it's going to be posting, and it is going to utilize the route that we created over here on our welcome, which is this route over here. So I'm just going to copy my route and come and paste it over here. That's my route number one. After it does that, it is also going to be utilizing our controller, which is called what? File. Oh, so before we actually can see it here, we need to actually include it here. So use app http, and we specify that these are what? This is the controller, and we specify the name of the controller as well. So it's http controller, and the name of our controller is what? File controller, like that. Once we include it, even over here, we should now be able to see our file controller as you noted, and this file controller is going to be within a class, and it is going to utilize, let's say, a function that is called upload, for lack of a better word. We put our what? Our semicolon. Awesome. So we have created our route, which is going to be uploading information from the form, and it is going to be utilizing this file controller, but it is also going to be manipulating what? This function. Now before we go too far, let's also deal with our database. Now whenever we're dealing with a form, which is a database and so forth, we come to our env file. First things first, we rename this to MySQL, and then the host, yes, it's localhost. The port is 3306. The database name, it says Laravel, but we can change that. The username says root. That's fine. So let's call this database file. So we have renamed this to MySQL, removed the hashtag symbols to make them not comments. Port for host address is this one, port 3306. The name of the database, not the name of the table, but the name of the database, the username and the password, which is empty. We can close that. Now let me just close majority of tabs that I see open over here. I want to remain with the least possible amount of opened tabs that we need. Alright, so next is we're going to be manipulating our database. So if we go to our database, we can come to a database and create a table called what? Or a database called file. Now this table is currently empty, as you note it says no database what? Inside. Now this is the very same database that we just created over here. We're just renaming it so that it can be able to see this database. Now after that, let's go to our database and manipulate some information, certain information. Now when we come to our models, I want to note something that we have to actually understand. Within our models, which is user, it has certain information like this user has factory notifiable, it has protected fillable information, or this being a variable or fileable information like a what? Like a list. Now what we're going to do is we are going to copy this whole text, then we are going to come and put it inside our products table. Now inside our products table, it is still protected information, but then we are going to be putting the names that we are going to be using inside our database. So obviously the first name is going to be, let's say, product title. The second one is going to be product description, and the third one is going to be what? File, as the name of the what? Name of the column. Now we are not doing anything but just saving it as it is. Done. Next, after that, we go to our database. Now on our database, what we now need to manipulate is not inside model. On our database, what we now need to manipulate is our migrations table for products. Now already it has an ID, so we are going to be creating a table which is going to hold information of a string, and it is going to be called title, which is the same one that we just put in our products table. So for lack of time and resources, not resources but per se, we just paste that, then we change, but the same way. So this is disk and this is file, like that. Now if we go back and take a look at our products table, title, disk, and what? And file should match these three. After that, now we can easily migrate our table and so forth, and all should what? Should be able to work. So we can close this. Even on this one, we can what? We can close. Now after doing that, let's migrate our table. So it's PHP artisan migrate. Now if we made a mistake, we will be notified here, but if we didn't make a mistake, everything is going to be migrated. And as you can see, the results are all green, meaning that our migrations were all done and everything was what? Was successful. For us to notice that, we come back to our database, we refresh the structure, and as you can see, we now have a products table which contains the title, the description, and the file, despite these other 2-3 columns that were automatically created. So we're done with this part. Next part is now us creating how the information is going to be uploaded onto our system. So yes, we do have a route, we do have the name of an application or the name of the function. So it now means that we are now going into our HTTP inside our controller, file controller. Then we create a public function which is called upload. Now this public function called upload is going to be responsible for a few key things. Number one, it is going to be responsible for grabbing information from what? From the user and so forth. So how do we go about it? It is going to first do what is known as a request. But for what? For request, which is the information coming through the file or the form. Now we also need to also include one of the most important aspects here, which is the model. So use app/models, and the name of our model, which is called what? Product. Like that. Now, because we're also dealing with files, we need to also utilize something that has to deal with something that is known as storage. So we use something that is known as an illuminate facade or facade. So we say use illuminate. We specify that this illuminate is going to be providing support. But what support is it giving us? It is supporting us on issues of this. For what? For storage purposes. Because we cannot store our file the way it is inside our database. We would have to manipulate it, so forth and so forth and so forth. So for that to now occur inside our function, we can now start by creating a new model. And my favorite variable being data is going to be equal to the new what? To the new model, which is the products table. Are we together? From there, we then create data is going to be getting its information on title, and as title gets its information, this is going to be coming through a request, but from a specified key column, whereby if we look at our form, our title is T, our description is D, and our label is, or our file is F. So it's going to be T over here, and copy and paste. This one is not going to be title, it is going to be disk like this, and it is getting information from a file D, this one from a file F, like that. But then now here's a concept. We cannot just upload the file the same way that we've been doing what? We've been doing all our string information and alright, so now we want to add on as to how we can manipulate a file and work with the file. Now for us to be able to add with the file, remember we've spoken about how we use this illuminate facades. Now the concept is we are going to utilize an if statement. Now we're going to say if. Now this if statement is going to utilize two conditions. One, to test if number one there is a file, and if the file is actually valid. So if we open bracket, the request that we are doing, so if the request which is giving us information, and this request is going to utilize a function called has file. If has file coming from an input tag called F, and also if that very same request file format that is being sent through F, this time it is no longer testing if it is a file, but it is testing if it is valid. So inside your if statement, you're testing two conditions. Number one, is there a file, and is the file valid? So we now then create a new variable which we can define as file. Right? Now file, remember this, not like we are creating it, but we are just giving it content before we push it to the database. So we're going to say file is going to be getting information through a request, but then this file, as it gets information through a request through file F, file F, it is now then going to manipulate the file, because we cannot, or we don't want to store a file that has got maybe 30-40 names all at once. So we can just now say file, or by creating a new variable, let's call it file name. File name is going to manipulate the time function and the extension of the file. So we are going to say if time, and in PHP we concatenate as well the file. So as you can see, currently what we are saying is this file name is going to be getting information from the time function, which gives back the date and time, and it is going to also combine it with whatever has been stored over here. but then it is not just storing the whole name. All we want from here is we're getting the file, then we ask for what is known as a get client original extension. That's what we need. So we are not just getting the file, but we are only getting the file's original extension. So that if, let's say, the document was today is Wednesday as a word, and it's a PDF, we would scrap out the whole word but still keep the PDF, which is the client's original extension. And then we can then manipulate that file, and then we move it to a specific folder that we created. Remember, we created a public folder called documents here, and within this public folder called documents, pretty much it has got nothing that we're going to be using. So file, then we ask it to move, and as we move it, we are moving it to a public underscore path. A public path is something that is going to be seen inside your public folder over here. So inside the public path, we specify where is it going to be stored. We are storing it in a folder called documents, and we are storing it not just as it is, but with the new name that was created by by the previous line, which is line 20. Now if this occurs correctly, then we won't have any issues. But if the task fails, we can just return a statement that tells us that there were errors. So we return back with a statement called with errors, which is a function, by the way. And this function, we are going to specify also the file name that was uploaded in the input tag, that this file name that was uploaded is not a valid file, something like that. And if that has occurred, and all is well, we can now just do our data file, and then we're now storing this file or this file's information inside inside our database, the same way we were doing here, but then this time we're now storing it not with this name, but with the name that was created by, which is file name over here. And once this is done, obviously we can do a data save, because we always want our information to be saved. Data save and a return redirect so that we remain on the very same page. So return redirect back. So this will just allow us to update or to put information on our system. Now after all of this, let me just re-explain what we just did in line 17 to line 25. So unlike just sending information that is string from the form straight to the database, with the file we first have to check, number one, if there is a file, because someone would inject your system. Number two, you just don't check if there's a file, but you also check if the file is valid. Why? Because the file has an extension. So after that occurs, we are now going to say the requested file, you store it inside a variable called file, but not to the database, just in PHP. Then we are going to create a new variable called file name, which is going to utilize the time function and the original extension of this valid file. So if your file is a PNG, .jpg, PDF, whatever, it is still going to get the extension and combine it with the time function to give your file a new name. And this is the name that is going to be stored inside our database. After that, it is going to move the file that we did send through line 19, and it's going to store it inside a folder called what? Documents. And it is going to store it with this file name. Otherwise, it is going to encounter errors. Now remember, this is just for us to get a name and move it to a path, but not store it inside the database. So line 28 now stores the file inside the database using the file name. And as you can see, over here it is no longer a request like what we were doing over here, because the request has already been done here. So we are now just grabbing this name into the database. Then we can save, then do a return redirect. Hopefully that was clear enough. Now once we are done, we optimize. PHP, yeah, optimize. Sorry guys, I'm just used to shortcuts. So PHP, after optimizing, we come back, we come over to our file, we take a look at our database. Our database is empty. Now if our database is empty, now let's also take a look at, let's also see if our documents, it's under public. So this folder is also what? Empty. So what's next? We come back. So let's say it's called a gaming icon as the title, description, icon for toots, and then the file. We just grab whatever file that we can get. Let me just pick this one, ghost web. Now as you can see, it says ghostweb.png. so with that file function, it has to get the original extension but give it a new name and remove this whole ghost web. We click upload. We made a mistake on something, unexpected token on this line. So let's take a look at it. On our return redirect back, I was supposed to not close it here. I'm supposed to actually close it over here. Awesome. So we go back, our file, we upload, it refreshes, we come back to our database, we refresh. There you can see ID and title were what? Title and description were still the same as the one that we uploaded, but the file now has a different name. It is no longer ghostweb.png, it is a time function.png. Now for us to see if our file was actually uploaded, we take a look at our files over here. Inside here there is a file which is this one. Now I think it won't be opening here, but let's get inside here. As you can see, there is our file, the very same file which we uploaded, but with a different name, but still the same extension. Thank you so much for this tutorial. Let's meet again as I show you how to work around with files and so forth.